I'm your host, David Howman, joining for the first time ever, it feels like. It has been a while since I've been on the show, and it is good to be back. I've forgotten the names of all of my other co-hosts, but reading the notes I have here, we've got Austin Bundy, Andrew Hazlett, Aya Abdeen, Tom Harden, with a really good show, talking about some not really good things happening in Arizona State sports these last few days. But whenever there's things to talk about, we've got takes on it. We've got, Tom told us before, this is our return to our battered fan syndrome. So this is the battered fan episode. And, it kind of feels like going home. That's what a lot of us are used to. And this is almost like familiar territory. So, Tom, since you've dubbed this the battered fan episode, go ahead and start off with just the general feelings and vibes with everything that's happened the last few days.
It's a little bit of just kind of like, it's like you've been punched like 5 or 6 times in your days and stumbling around and kind of like, what the heck's going on here? Why are we here? What is this? And when had kind of a decent feeling with hockey and their performance on Friday night, but then on Saturday it just all went downhill. There was just never any point where it felt like they had it in hand. And after a loss in the rivalry game for basketball, both of those losses back to back, I'm just sitting there like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's I don't think any of us really expected a different outcome for the men's basketball game, playing against that other team in the state that's undefeated and ranked number 1 in the nation. We're not a basketball school, and it's, although it was looking like we were a women's basketball school, because Molly Miller's been doing a phenomenal job, and that women's basketball team has been great. But they also lost on Sunday. First time losing at home all season long. They lost to a Kansas State team that really had no business even being in the game. And Kansas State was just shooting lights out from 3 and got that win. So it was not only, the disappointing loss in hockey, it was a disappointing loss in women's basketball, and then the familiar with men's basketball losing yet again to their rival. And Bobby Hurley has been he's been bumming me out in his post-game press conferences.
Bumming Bobby.
Yeah. I mean, he a couple of weeks ago he said I'm failing and I don't know how to get through to this team. After the loss to Arizona, he said something like, it's too late to figure things out now. Austin.
Don't forget, he also went on. He also went on to say, it was a road game for Saturday's game.
Yeah, which when they played on the road against this team a couple of weeks ago, they almost beat them, and they lost by a larger margin in Tempe than they did in Tucson. But Austin, is there any hope for men's basketball?
No.
Okay.
I think Saturday was probably the first game this year that I watched all the way through, and Bobby was right. It sounded like an away game once you got 15 minutes into the first half. It just felt like anytime U of A scored a basket, I would be looking away at something and hear a cheer, and somebody scored, and I look over, and U of A score goes up instead of ours. And it just confused the heck out of me for a while, just because it didn't sound like we were playing at home for most of that game. And, just from the eye test, it did feel like ASU was giving a lot of heart in that game, and they kept it pretty close for a while. I was impressed that they were able to go into this game after having just barely lost to them down in Tucson, and then usually in a follow-up like that, ASU can't keep up. The other team makes the adjustments and they come in and smack ASU in the second bout, but ASU actually looked like they were going to hang around again. I thought, okay, if this is still within 4 points at halftime, this is still a winnable game. ASU maybe just figures things out down the stretch, and it just simply didn't get to that, and U of A just pulled away in the end. it just what kind of I can't even say it encapsulates the rest of the season, just because the rest of the season has just been smackdown after smackdown, just like not even having any chance of winning games or looking like they've already clocked out this year. This is just a run out the clock situation on Bobby's tenure and on the rest of the season. Like, we're in February now, so we're just about in the home stretch, and I feel like if there was an opportunity to decline an invite to the Big 12 tournament, they should do it. Because I'm not sure it would be very much use of their time to go and travel for this thing, and just be eliminated the first night. So, I mean, I feel like whenever they do have to make those travel arrangements, it's very much going to be a in one night, out the next, and head back to Tempe and lick your wounds that off season and figure out how to replace Bobby.
So I was basically at that game on Saturday, which Cam Scadaboo was also at that game as well. And first half, I do have to say that the Sun Devils have fought really hard, keeping them as they were tied at 38 apiece at halftime, which is a good sign. Like, a lot of fans were anticipating that Arizona State was going to be the first team to beat Arizona in a thrilling way, but once the second half began, that went basically in a different direction. Kawhi Pete, the freshman, he's been unstoppable, and they couldn't slow down the Wildcats when it comes to points in the paint, in which they outscored them 50-20. There was like a lot of dunks in which I literally lost count. And Bobby Hurley said in postgame that it's not a home game because there was a lot of red and blue fans in the stands for sure.
Yeah, and of course Koa Pete, plays for the Wildcats. Came very, very close to playing for the Sun Devils, though. It was pretty much the two of them neck and neck in his recruitment this past year. And, of course, Koa Pete's brother, Keona, was on the football team. He was a preferred walk-on, played tackle. Kenny Dillingham even got him in the game for one of their non-conference games earlier in the year. And somebody asked him, it was funny, they asked him after, they were like, when you put him in, was that, to help with Koa Pete? And he was kind of like, oh, I can't comment on recruiting, and gave a little weight to the media in attendance. And so it was just like not even just Bobby Hurley. Everyone went all out for this guy. And then at the last moment, of course, the historic blue blood is able to come in and get him. And then he absolutely wrecked that game. But I mean, the thing with ASU basketball all season, it's been the black cloud hanging above them all year. Is awesome. Like you mentioned, Bobby Hurley's contract. It's up at the end of the year. If it wasn't the end of his contract after this season, I think they probably would be either have already made a move to move on from him at this point in the season, or be like on the precipice of doing so. Last year, when they made the decision that he was going to coach into the final year of his contract, it was pretty evident at that point. Like, he's got one last year, barring some magical tournament run. This is his last year, and the way that Hurley's been speaking recently in his press conferences, it just feels like he knows it. Everybody kind of knows it, and it's just a weird feeling to be in that spot, because it's like, how do you generate excitement at that point? And when he's saying, I can't get through to these players, like, what is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to say? And most of these players that they brought in were guys that they had to recruit from lower levels. I mean, Anthony Johnson came from the NAIA level. Like, that's kind of where they had, and he's been great, all due respect to the NAIA, but you don't see many Power 4 programs taking transfers from that level. And it just kind of speaks to the overall state of the men's basketball program right now.
I do have to add it as well that Bobby Hurley's time as head coach for men's basketball team is basically running out. Not because of the inconsistencies on the court, but because basically there is a lot of things that the Sun Devils men's basketball needs to do. So, for example, Arizona State women's basketball team, like you mentioned, David, they brought in Molly Miller to replace Natasha Adair, who was fired after another losing season last year. Look where they're at. They are still competitive in the Big 12, even though they're still finding their footing in the Big 12 conference play. But it's really such a beautiful sight to see. I also spoke to Arizona State women's basketball alum and legend, Brianna January, today. She said that Molly Miller reminds her so much of Charlie Thurner-Torn, which got me really fascinated. Add in football as well. Graham Rossini, the athletic director, brought in Kenny Dillingham, and look where they are at. They won the Big 12 championship and made an appearance in the college football playoffs. So I could see the men's basketball team heading that type of direction, like when it comes to finding a new voice for the head coach who could get them back to where they basically want to be. It starts with a new voice. So I do have to say it's time to move on from Bobby Hurley. And even though the season is basically not over yet, there is still like some games to play. I have a feeling that they're going to move on for him. Full stop.
Well, whoever the next head coach for men's basketball is going to be, really need to have somebody who really embodies the activate the valley mentality that's been brought in under Graham Rossini. You see Coach Dillingham out in the community, drumming up support. You see that from JJ Van Neal. You see it from Molly Miller. Willie Blomquist and Coach Powers to an extent as well. You don't see that at all out of Bobby Hurley for men's basketball, and it's arguably as much as basketball is the second bellwether for athletic programs after football. This is for Arizona State. It's almost like the forgotten one, or maybe not the forgotten one, but just the one that is easiest to not care about, as much as you need a really solid basketball team to generate that athletic revenue.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that it's so easy to forget about is because, well, not only, obviously, historically, Arizona State has not been good in men's basketball, but also their biggest rival has been phenomenal in basketball. It's been a minute since they actually won the whole thing, which, that's something that we still have to brag about. One of very few things in basketball. But so it's like, even when we've had our best years, we're still not going to be as good as our rival. We still probably won't have a winning record against them under whichever coach it is. Best case, you're splitting that series, and that's hard. That's a really hard thing to make people care about when that's the case. But I think what Aya was saying, though, the comparison with Molly Miller, I fully expect ASU to be, when the job does open, if the job opens, to be a somewhat desirable job. And obviously it depends on what else is open. People talk about, Memphis might be open. That's obviously going to be like a pie in the sky opening. LSU, potentially Ole Miss, a few other programs like that would be that's where everybody wants to go. But I don't think that this is going to be an overly crowded coaching cycle. I could end up being wrong. There's still, a month and a half of regular season play left. But I think when you look at ASU, when you look at what Molly Miller's already done in year one, because she almost completely started over with that roster, the vast majority of those players she got in the portal. And it wasn't even like she brought in her whole team from Grand Canyon, because majority of her team that Grand Canyon went to the tournament with were all seniors. And so it wasn't like she just, like when Kurt Signetti went to Indiana, he brought, pretty much his whole James Madison team to Indiana. So they all knew the team, they all knew the coaches, they all knew what they were doing. Molly Miller didn't do that, and she was still able to have success because of her work ethic, because of her coaching connections and her background, and just her sheer energy. And Tom, you were talking about how these coaches are all getting involved at ASU, and I see this pop up on the women's basketball Instagram all the time of like, Molly Miller's just on campus outside of the Memorial Union, and she's just like on the microphone, like pumping up fans and everything. And I remember when I was a student, I went to the Memorial Union all the time. I never saw coaches out there, and that's just a really unique thing that just seems so simple. A way to get people really invested is like, I actually spoke to this coach and she said, come out to the game, it's going to be a big one. And if you can get that kind of energy and that kind of buy-in and that kind of commitment from the next men's basketball coach, on top of, they've already announced the renovations that are coming to Desert Financial Arena, the fact that you've got James Harden, who, I mean, he is the biggest face and name in program history for basketball, and he was at this most recent game. They just unveiled their James Harden like limited edition jerseys that they got to wear, which were very nice. I'm gonna shell out some money to get one for myself.
I second that.
And James Harden has donated in the past money to the program as well to help with NIL, with things like that. And he's indicated that he's willing to do more as well. I think you can see a lot of potential there if you have a coach who can identify that and then has a plan to capitalize on it. I wouldn't go so far as to say that ASU men's basketball is a sleeping giant, because they're still in the Big 12, and that is a tough conference to be in. But there's definitely potential there. And for the right coach, for somebody who has the same type of makeup as Kenny Dillingham, Molly Miller, JJ Van Neal, there is a very clear pathway to having success with this program.
I want to jump in on the whole coaches showing up like at the MU or getting involved with the Activate the Valley stuff. I think there's a little bit of PR strategy that's going into that, with the fact that you're not seeing Hurley out there, because when you think about it, Dillingham started the whole Activate the Valley thing late into his first year, and it really took off on an actual engagement level last year. And if you notice who was participating in that, it was mostly Dillingham in the football program. Some others mixed in there. Powers and hockey was getting in on it because they were successful. You didn't see any of the basketball coaches out there because both teams were not successful. You bring in Molly Miller, and that's got to be in the interview process. It's a prerequisite that you got to be engaged with the fan base. You got to be engaged with this movement in order to generate more eyeballs, generate more butts in seats. And I think this year, the fact that Bobby is, out of everybody, the longest tenured out of all of them, and still has not been involved in that, I think is from a PR point of view, because he's just not popular anymore. I think just they have to be thinking, you can't march out Bobby Hurley in the middle of the MU to get people to go to games. We know what the student body is like. They are going to flame him in the middle of the public square there. He's not going to be received very well regardless. So I think there's a little bit.
Thankfully, Bobby Hurley is known for his calm, even-keeled nature, so that would go okay with him.
Yeah, he knows how to handle.
We'll see how it goes when the lettuce starts flying at him as he's there on the stage.
Exactly.
They can throw Bobby Hurley Jr. out there. He's now on the coaching staff, not a student anymore.
True. Yeah, get all three generations of Bobby Hurleys. Yeah, it's funny actually, because I, for those who don't know, I live out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and there's an RV dealership out here whose name is Bob Hurley. And it threw me for a loop the first time I saw a billboard that said Bob Hurley RVs, and I was just like, man, if that's not a bad omen for the future of this basketball program. But
I've never thought about asking if he could come in and guest coach a game.
Yeah, he could be the interim coach the rest of the way.
Don't worry, we have Bob Hurley at home.
Yeah.
LOL.
But,
So what really stood out to me in Saturday's game was, as Mo Odom goes, this team goes. When he's in the game and active in the game, the offense is flowing seamlessly through him. He's able to. I've said it before on the show. He's proven to be a really great floor general out there, and can dictate the play really well. It's when he's off the floor with foul trouble that the offense just falls apart, and it looks like they forgot how to tie their shoes. This, it's night and day difference, and kind of call it Hurley, losing the team and not being able to get through to these guys, or just the fact that the team just doesn't mesh well together. But that's, when you have one guy that is the glue, and then it all goes away when he's off the floor. That's never a good sign.
Yeah, and I think that's been that's been a common criticism that I've at least had with the whole Bobby Hurley tenure, is like he's really good at getting talented players in, but then it just feels like whenever those talented players are either having an off day or they're not on the court, things don't really go well. Last year's team, of course, he had the 2 5-stars that he was able to bring in, and there were plenty of games that they were able to either win or be competitive in, surely because of those two just showing off the talent that they have as former 5-star recruits. But then when one of them has a bad day or one of them gets in foul trouble, then it's like we don't really have a whole backup plan for that. And you've seen that throughout the different years that he's had. I remember the first guard U team, and it was like, we're just gonna shoot 53s a game, and if we make half of them, we're gonna win the game just by sheer numbers. But then you get into one of those games where your shot isn't falling, and there's not really a backup plan, and that's something that's always kind of a red flag from a coaching standpoint for me. Is like you go in with plan A, and then if plan A doesn't work out, try again next week. And to continue making the comparison to women's basketball and to kind of transition into talking about them too, that's one thing that really stands out to me about the women's team is they definitely have their star player in Gabby Elliott. She's just a scoring machine. She's a walking bucket. But they also have other players who contribute frequently. McKenna Brackens, Eloisa Kaira, both are just forces down low. Marley Washenitz is both a sharpshooter and just like do anything that you ask her to, just like a raging bull out there. And the way that the offense moves too is so different from the offenses we've seen under Bobby Hurley. Like there's very intentional motion. Everybody touches the ball. People are cutting. There's just precision in the way that things move around. And that's why, like, even in a game like on Sunday when they lost to Kansas State, which I know you were there for that as well. I mean, they were losing by a fairly decent margin for most of that game, but they still had moments like they would go on runs, and even in like the last minute, suddenly they start making shots and they start getting stops, and you're like, are they going to do it? Are they going to come back? Because that's just kind of the level of intensity that they have. You can't ever count a team like that out, even though they've lost multiple games in the last couple of weeks. That seems to be alarming, but they still, even though they were losing, they weren't losing in a sense that made you feel like they don't have a plan.
100%. So I do have to add in as well, Molly Miller and McKenna Bracken spoke to the media today about what types of challenges Kansas State was giving. So one of the examples was that the Wildcats' defense was targeting Gabby Elliott, in which her three-point shooting was limited to 3 for 11 for the field, but she had 18 points as well. And they also got Marley Washenitz into foul trouble, which I'm going to speak in a little bit. But, I mean, one of the bright spots was how they never give up, in which is a moral victory for sure. In which how they can look at it as like a positive side to continue building on. Like, yes, like that. Like, I mean, respect to Kansas State for giving the Sun Devils this type of challenge that they didn't expect today, But for Washenitz, like, a lot of fans love Washenitz for her fiery passion on both ends of the court. But she got to be really careful on getting in foul trouble, because if she gets in foul trouble, that could be a whole different game for sure. And Adian Heloisa Carrera and McKenna Brackens, the last game, they had double-doubles in rebounds and points. Today, neither of them had it, but I mean, both of them have scored in double figures, which is a bright side. But They just need to clean up on defending from the 3-point line because Kansas State was shooting lights out from the line as well.
Yeah, they were not only were they shooting lights out, but like you said, how they targeted Gabby Elliott. I mean, they were running a zone for most of the game, and it was. I mean, Arizona State kind of started to figure it out at various times, and then Kansas State would switch it up, and then they would kind of figure it out again, and then Kansas State switched it up. So they came in with really detailed Plan A, Plan B, Plan C for taking Gabby Elliott out of it. Which, I mean, you'll have games like that, and sometimes you just can't adjust in time, and you take your lumps with that. But
I was going to say I know I was going to chime in on this with Washington, but I believe this is like the second time in the last 3 or 4 games that that Washington has fouled out. So you know, I know you'll expand on that a little bit more, but that's certainly troubling for me to see at least.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean it's a double-edged sword when you have a player like that. Like she's the enforcer of the team. She's I don't want to say she's the Draymond Green because there's definitely a difference in play style there, but similar as far as like Dylan Brooks. Let's say she's the Dylan Brooks to make it a Suns analogy. When you have a player like that, you got to kind of. I feel like you know that's going to be the risk you run into, and you just kind of you accept that because the alternative is then you lose all of the defensive plays that she makes because she gets steals all the time, she gets blocks on occasion, and there's a lot that the stat sheet doesn't account for either. Where when you watch the games, the way that she like her instinct for coming off and playing help defense and doubling opponents will lead to steals for other players as well. And so when you look at that stat sheet, she'll have 4 steals, but then there's like, they should make like an assist to steal stat for that one as well. And she'd probably be able to get double doubles just from points and all of that combined. And so I think, obviously there's, you still got to coach up the restraint on not crossing the line into actually fouling them. But I think with a player like that, you kind of accept that you're going to have a couple of games that she's going to foul out of. And, if you – because you don't want to get into a situation like ASU did once with Vontaz Burfict where it was like, okay, he's the enforcer of that defense, and then you tell him, okay, now you got to pull back, and then he can't make any plays, and then you say, actually just go nuts. And then he's getting kicked out of every game. So I think they've – all in all this season, you've seen a really good – instinct for riding the line for Washinetz. And the last couple of games, it's gone against her a little bit, but personally, I'm fine with that.
There's an imposition factor to it where as a defender, you need to be somebody that the opposing coaching staff is constantly strategizing for because yes, you're going to foul out in those situations, but if you're going to find that balance in which when you're on the court, the offense has to decide whether or not to go through you and attempt to draw the foul, or they're going to try and figure out how to score around you. You want to be the person who can balance being, when you're on the court, they're going to try and score from somewhere else. You have taken a piece of the court away from the offense, which is huge. But you also want to be the person that is – you want to invite the challenge from the offense to try and take you on. And that's where you need to be able to have the restraint of being the one who's drawing the contact instead of being such an imposition that you are creating the contact. And it's a fine line, and it's a lot easier to say than do. But a lot of the best defenders in the game find that balance, and that's where I feel like she has the talent to be able to be the imposition against an offense where a coach has to decide, okay, this person, if she refines her game to the point where a coach now looks at her and says, okay, you can't drive the basket when she's on the court anymore because she's going to draw the foul. You're going to turn the ball over when she is there. You need to go to the other corner, or you need to find a different edge to gain leverage to get in there. Rather than being the person that when they're on the court, the coach is immediately telling whoever has the ball, drive the basket because she's gonna create the contact.
Right. Well, and to be fair too, Washington does draw a lot of charges too. So like, because to your point, sometimes coaches will say she's physical and just drive and she'll get the foul, but she's also been very good, one of the best on the team at drawing charges, which Molly Miller has been. That's something that she puts a premium on with this roster is like, we're going to play aggressive, we're going to play physical, and then when they try to match us, we're going to draw the charge. And it's worked very, very well for the whole of the season. And I think Washington's is probably the best one at, again, riding that line of I'm going to be physical. And then when you try to go through me, like I'm hitting the deck and they're going to call it in my favor. And, you know, and that may also be kind of what we're seeing these last couple of weeks too, is that it may be that refs are starting to see that and they're not necessarily giving her the benefit of the doubt anymore either. Whereas earlier in the year, they see somebody try to go through her and they're like, okay, that's clearly a charge. And now they kind of know, okay, she's fishing for it. We're not necessarily going to give it to her all the time kind of thing. You know, once again, the refs are foiling all of our fun as Sun Devil fans. Story of my life. But also, I mean, we're talking about this Kansas State loss, but it shouldn't get lost in all of the context too. Is they beat Arizona earlier this week. They beat them on Wednesday, and I mean, right now I'm looking at the Big 12 standings, and the Wildcats are tied for the worst record in the Big 12. So it's not like a hang your hat on that kind of thing. But they also had lost 6 in a row, hadn't beat them in almost 4 years, and they snapped that. And that is something I think that is deserving of some recognition, is deserving of some praise, especially when we look back literally just to last year. I mean, this team has already made huge strides and improvements over last year. And it's funny because they got off to such a hot start to where I think we all kind of got to the point of saying, all right, this is going to be a huge year. Like, they're going to be one of the best teams in the Big 12, and to where now we feel like it feels like a disappointment. But it's like, you know, just remember where we were a year ago, and kind of similar to the football season where it was like 2 years ago they won 3 games, and you know the fact that being in the Sun Bowl was a letdown for ASU football is still a big deal, and it's an indication of where the overall program is trending right now.
For sure. I do have to add in as well. I remember when one of the players of the Sun Devils women's basketball team stated early on that now, like when it comes to the Big 12 conference play, basically everyone wants to beat Arizona State. And as a result, now like the Sun Devils are 5-5 in Big 12, in which it's a hard and tough conference to play, for sure, like basically, but it does not take away the fact that they still have success to the season. Like no matter how the season will end, whether they'll appear in a women's national invitation or invitational or the NCAA tournament, that's still a big leap from last season's team as well. And that's going to get better from there. It's just a new beginning.
Yeah, well, and looking at the rest of their schedule too, I mean, they do play some of the top teams in the Big 12 coming up. They've got they'll face Baylor in a little bit. Iowa State has kind of stumbled a little bit, but they are a very talented team. They've got BYU and Texas Tech, so there's definitely some opportunities here to still show that they can compete with the big dogs of the Big 12 before we get to the actual conference tournament. A lot of season left for them, but switching gears a little bit to a season that is just starting up is baseball and softball. And of course, on Sunday, we kind of got one step closer with the second annual softball celebrity game, I think is what they call it. It's very creative in the naming. But there were a bunch of big names, you know, alums that came back to participate in this game. Spencer Torkelson was one of them. Some celebrities as well. The drummer for Jimmy Eat World was there. You know, that's a fun one. Big fan of Jimmy Eat World. And of course, the big one was Cam Scadaboo, who needed a pinch runner because he's still not able to fully run in his preparation and trying to heal up to go play for the Giants and whichever terrible offensive coordinator they hire at this point, right, Austin?
No comment.
But don't worry, I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury is going to get it in his third try. But Cam Scadaboo also his second at bat, he hit a home run. Not surprising at all. He hit plenty of home runs on the football field back in his playing days at ASU, and so it was a really fun time. I don't know how many of you guys were able to like tune in or catch any of it, but
there.
it was fun to see. Andrew, you were there?
Yeah, it was funny because right before that home run, Scadaboo's like, I just hope I don't make an out, man. Just got to get the ball in play.
Yeah. And I feel like that's that's on brand for Scadaboo too. Like I'm just trying to make something happen here, and then just like boom, it just
Best possible outcome.
yeah. I mean,
I gotta say,
you said about the double pass touchdown in the Peach Bowl too. He's like, yeah, the play was broken, and then I just threw a touchdown.
Yeah, I gotta say, seeing torque bombs back at Mooney was a nice sight to see as well.
Yeah, I think it was kind of strange for me because I feel like we're not like it's not actually baseball season yet. We shouldn't be this close to baseball season starting up again, and that's just. I also can't believe that we're in February. Things have flown by so quickly, so it's all throwing me off right now.
Don't worry, it's going to be football season in like 2 weeks, so that's the way it feels like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's technically there is still football left. It's going to be a blowout win for Seattle.
Ooh.
I think we all agree. We're all rooting for the Seahawks, right?
I'll never forget the fact that I was in the student section the night we played USC my freshman year, and it was like 107 degrees at kickoff at like 7 p.m. and it all. I don't know how many of you remember the fact that I think we were up like 7-3 in the first quarter or something like that, and the defense had them backed up against their own end zone. It was like a 3rd and long. The student section is absolutely berating Sam Darnold, calling him overrated and everything, and then he airs out this long pass for a touchdown, and I'll never forget, he just turns around to the student section and just yells profanities back at us as he's running to celebrate.
Well, who had it on their bingo card that Sam Darnold would be the first USD quarterback to play in a Super Bowl?
Not me.
Not Matt Leinart.
Not Matt Leinart. That's for sure. But as much as we could talk about the Super Bowl and how much we hate Sam Darnold and Drake May, who's ready for baseball season? I'm excited for it after what happened last year. It doesn't feel like we should be there yet, but I'm excited to see what Willie Bloomquist can do in his first year after getting back to the tournament. Don't all talk at once.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited.
Okay, so nobody's excited for baseball. All right, that's fine. Book it. All right, well.
I'm excited for baseball season. I think that this this program had a nice bounce back, getting back to the tournament last year. But now it's how do you follow that up? How do you take that next step and get beyond a regional, or at least get to a regional championship game if they can't get to a super regional just yet? I think the pieces are there. It's how well the execution is made and making sure the right guys are in the right spot in the lineup, getting the rotations set. I think it can be done. It's just how well will it be executed.
Yeah, the rotation's the key part. The rotation, to be honest, was kind of the weak point of the team last year, and they didn't really get any obvious guys to be, oh, this is your Friday night starter or Saturday night starter. Yes, you've got Cole Carlone, who probably should be starting on Fridays. That's who I would pick. But besides that, it's very up in the air in terms of who's on this pitching staff that they might select. Alex Overbay is a name that seems to be getting a lot of traction from what Coach Bloomquist is saying. And Cole Klecker, to me, seems like a guy that they would want to throw out there as well. But my confidence in whoever they throw out there, at least to start, isn't going to be super high just because no one's proven anything yet. And that's kind of a concern for me.
Well, and even with Cole Carlone, I mean, I know there's a lot of excitement about him, and he was easily their best reliever last year. But he was their best reliever last year, and now you're putting him into a starting role. And which is not to say that, I mean, there's a lot of pitchers that have started out in a relief role and gone on to be a starting pitcher. But there's always the question of how do they handle that? And to have that guy be your Friday night starter and you've never seen him be a starter is, again, concerning. Or, I mean, not concerning, but it's an area for concern. And like you said, Andrew, that was their issue last year. I feel like that's been their issue every year under Willie Bloomquist is the bats are there, the offense is there. It's just a matter of can they hold on to the lead. And last year, it felt like they made a lot of improvements on their pitching, and there were still a lot of games where they couldn't hold on to a lead to save their life. And so until we actually see it happen, it's hard to believe that the pitching will actually be fixed. But another thing going into this year is that ASU baseball is expanding. They've expanded their scholarship amounts. They've almost tripled it from what it was before. They were one of the teams that committed to having, I believe it's 34 full scholarships on the roster now, as a result of the House settlement. And so Willie Bloomquist has made this a big deal. He's saying this is going to allow us to be so much more competitive, to be deeper, to have a much better overall roster. And it's, last year was exactly what he needed in that we got back to the tournament. But we got to the tournament and then we were out. And the expectations are much higher than that. And I think Graham Rossini even said, we expect much more than just getting there, getting bounced. And this feels like the year where they need to actually show that, and they need to go a little bit further. And I know there's been a lot of buzz from some of the national baseball writers saying, they're not necessarily buying in right now, but if the pitching can take another step from last year, Arizona State could be a team that gets to Omaha.
I'm not going to lie to our listeners, but I'm a very casual baseball observer. But just off of what we're talking about with our pitching staff and the fact that we've got a reliever that's going to be coming into a starting role, I think the biggest problem with that is going to be how do you handle his fatigue and endurance level? Because the biggest thing that's going to be the biggest issue transitioning into that type of role, especially this past offseason, because, sure, it's a long time, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to transition a reliever to the starter role where he's going to be able to handle a much, much greater pitch count. And what happens mentally if he's getting shelled, there are some relievers who are really only accustomed to maybe giving up that one home run in the bottom of the eighth or in the ninth inning. What's going to happen if he's only 2 innings deep and he's already given up 2 homers, if he's given up a bunch of hits? How is he going to rebound? Because, college baseball, it's not like you can constantly go to your bullpen. That's a sign of impending disaster if you're having to go to your bullpen a lot with starters that are clearly not as experienced and not able to go as far inning wise as a professional would. Ideally, you want somebody, if you have enough trust and enough confidence in a guy to go from reliever to starter, I'm really hoping he's going to be a guy who can go longer than 5 innings. But in reality, it's going to be somebody who maybe only gets through that 5 exactly, and they have to go to the pen. So it's going to be a resource management issue for Willie Bloomquist in days that this guy is going to start. Is your pen healthy enough to go to them in the 6th right off the bat there? Or is this somebody that you have enough confidence in that he is going to pitch well enough to maybe take a batter or two into the 6th before you have to go and bring in somebody from the pen? I really hope that's the case, but if not, I mean, thank goodness the scholarships have expanded, because if it doesn't work out this year, then maybe that's something that they prioritize in the portal or in recruiting next year, is beefing up the pen enough to the point where if you've got to go to it because your starting pitching is just not going to go deep enough, you need to figure out how to backstop that elsewhere.
I think also the trouble is with the college game, you're not conditioned to seeing a lot of big arm, a lot of length out of these arms for the starting pitchers. I see far more pitchers going only 4 and a third, 4 2/3 innings. I see a lot of times where the bullpen is getting into the game early and often, and that's not any reflection on the performance of the starting pitcher. It's sometimes just that guy's throwing 4 shutout innings, but his arm just doesn't have the length. So when you're getting a guy who's coming in from that shorter relief situation, that's already sending up a flag of, is this guy going to eventually develop and give a little bit more length, or is he going to be utilized as the opener like we've started seeing a lot more at the Major League Baseball level?
I'm kind of going to push back on this a little bit, because Cole Carlone, he's a guy that threw 4 or more innings from the pen 3 separate times last year. His season high pitch count was 67 pitches in a game. So he can eat innings. I think, yes, it's only 4, but as a reliever, 4 is still a lot. I think it's stretching him out to 6, maybe 7 on some occasions, isn't that far out of the realm of possibility for him. I think he's a guy that has that potential. It's interesting to me that Bloomquist really hasn't named anyone to any position yet at this point in terms of offense or defense, but I do anticipate Cole Carlone being a starter probably Friday, but I wouldn't be surprised Saturday either.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, Andrew, about Carlone, like, there's a reason that they have been prepping him to be a starter since pretty much from the moment last season ended. Like, the potential is clear. It's just, again, the uncertainty is, if you get him in that role and then, maybe he's not ready, or it takes a little bit throughout the season for him to get to that point, then again, it's the same issue as the last few years of what do we do? What do we do with the pitching? How do we get around this? And so I'm an optimistic guy, and I really like what I saw from Cole Carlone last year. He got much better as the season went on, too. He started out really good and got even better. So I do think that it's going to go really well for the Sun Devils with him. But if you ask me to say today, do I think that he's going to finish the year out as their number 1 starter as far as like the statistics and everything go? I don't know. And again, to your point, we don't really know who else it's going to be. But a year ago, we all thought Ben Jacobs was going to be this he was going to be their ace, and it was going to be, when Ben Jacobs is on the mound, you're going to win. And it ended up being, he was probably your least reliable starter, whereas Jack Martinez just completely took the team by storm. So you don't really know until you actually see it happen. and that's why I'm excited for baseball season to get started. I know none of you guys clearly just complete apathy, I guess. But again, it's the Battered Fan Show, so it's fitting for where we're at right now. But we of course we've got more games coming up. Women's basketball will be back, and surely they'll be getting back into their winning ways. Men's basketball will be getting back into their ways. Tom, what's coming up for Sun Devil hockey after an uneven weekend?
Well, an uneven weekend, I think, is a very generous way of putting it. Andrew, I'm sure
I'm
you'll
an
agree.
optimistic person.
Andrew, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. There was about 41 minutes of solid hockey played by the Sun Devils, and 80 minutes of not good hockey played up in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just a really back and forth game on Friday, and thankfully the Sun Devils did pull out the 6-5 overtime win on Joel Shelbrick's second goal of the season. But then Saturday's game just absolutely did not have it at any point. I found myself watching a team that looked like they lost. They showed up at the wrong rink practically. They showed up for just open skate rather than an actual game, and it's put the Sun Devils really behind the 8 ball. And I say that with a little bit of a pun, as the Sun Devils are currently at in that 8 seed in the NCHC standings as we speak, tied with Colorado College. Actually in 7th seed. I stand corrected, but still, it's not a spot that the Sun Devils want to be in. Only 1 point ahead of 9th place Omaha, and 9th place doesn't get you an invitation to the conference tournament. Your season's done if you finish in 9th place. Still 8 games for the Sun Devils to make up ground. They will be hosting St. Cloud State this Friday and Saturday from Moat Arena. St. Cloud State is only a point ahead of the Sun Devils. It's really tight in the bottom 5 of the conference. You have last year's bottom feeder Miami currently leading that pack of the bottom 5, but it's as alarmist as I look at this season. It's really still anybody's chance to take any of those bottom 4 seeds and still be in the tournament.
I would agree. I do want to say ASU has 2 more games to play than St. Cloud State and Omaha, so I would imagine Arizona State is in this tournament. But if the Omaha series winds up in 2 games where ASU loses to Omaha, ASU is probably not going to be in the NCHC tournament. I don't anticipate that happening. For one, it's a home series, so you should be winning one of those 2 games against a team like that. But yeah.
But ahead of this week's series for St. Cloud State, I will be confirming this week, but we should have a guest joining us. We should be having Nick Maxon, the radio play-by-play voice for the St. Cloud Huskies, joining us to give his views and insights into St. Cloud hockey and the challenges that they see in Arizona State.
That'll be a really insightful conversation to have, and I'm looking forward to it. Of course, we'll have potentially that and much more coming up. You can always find coverage of all these games that are coming on Devils in Detail as well. Hey, we all write there. You can find work from all of us there. So check that out. And of course, we'll be breaking it all down here on the show, echoing from the buttes as always. And I may even come back next time. Who knows? Who's to say? You might have to hear my voice twice in a week as opposed to not at once throughout the month of January.
Back-to-back episodes in this economy?
Yeah, it all depends on how much more snow we get out here in Oklahoma. So we'll see what's going on there. But until next time, for Aya Abdeen, Austin Bundy, Tom Harden, and Andrew Hazlett. I am David Hellman, signing off for Echo from the Buttes. As always, give 'em hell, Devils.